Welcome to the lecture series in computer science. We are seeing a series of lectures in the subject problem solving and Python programming. This subject is for the students studying in their first semester degree program, first semester BE BTech degree program, and it has a subject code of GE 8151. In today's session, we will be seeing the topic on programming languages. The contents of the session are: we will be seeing the purpose of the programming languages, the classification of programming languages, the types of high level languages, and then we will summarize this session. As far as the programming languages are concerned, a programming language, the definition of programming language, the programming language is a set of symbols and rules for instructing a computer to perform specific tasks. The programmers have to follow all the specified rules before writing the program by using the programming language. The user has to communicate with the computer using the language which it can understand. Now let us see the broad classifications of the programming languages. The languages are highly classified into, it is broadly classified into three different types. One is called as the low level language or the machine language. The second one is said to be the assembly language. The third classification is said to be the high level language. Now let us see what a low level language or a machine language is. In a low level language, the computer can understand only machine language which uses zeros and ones. In a machine language, the different instructions are formed by taking different combinations of zeros and ones. Machine language is the only language which the computer understands. For executing any program written in any programming language, the conversion of the machine language is necessary. The programs written in machine language can be executed directly on the computer without any process conversion. So, the machine language is said to have a high speed of computation. The machine language program is translation free because it has only zeros and ones. Since the conversion time is saved, the execution of machine language program is extremely fast. It is hard to find errors in a program written in the machine language. Writing programs in machine language is a time consuming process. Machine language differs from computer to computer. The programs developed for a particular type of computer may not run the other type of the computer. Let us see about the assembly level language. The assembly level language is a symbolic representation of machine language. Assembly languages are the symbolic programming languages that uses the symbolic notation to represent the machine language instruction. For example, if we want to add two numbers or two numbers which has been present imbibed in a variable called a and b, the notation that is used is add a comma b. So this is the example of the assembly level language. Assembler is a program which translates assembly language instruction into a machine language. Assembly languages are easy to understand and use. As I said in the earlier example, it was if I want to add two numbers which has been imbibed in a variable called a and b, I am using the code, the notation called as add a comma b. So it is easy to understand and use. It is easy to locate and it is very easy to correct the errors. The assembly language program which can be executed on the machine depends on the architecture of that computer, hence it is machine dependent. But assembly languages are hard to learn because it is pretty old. It is less efficient as it needs to convert from assembly level language to a machine language. Now let us see about the high level language. The high level languages contain English like words and it uses few symbols too. The specified rules are to be followed while writing programs in high level language. The interpreter or compilers are used for converting these programs into machine readable form. The program that translates high level language into machine language is called interpreter or compiler. Now, let us see what a compiler is, what an interpreter is. A compiler is a program which translates the source code written in a high level language into an object code which is in machine language program. My dear viewers, this definition of compiler is pretty important as far as any examination or any kind of interview point of view is concerned. I repeat again, the compiler is a program which translates the source code written in a high level language into object code which is in machine language program. Compiler reads the whole program written in high level language and translate it to machine level language. If any error is found, it displays the error message on the screen. Now let us see what an interpreter is. An interpreter translates the high level language program line by line. The interpreter translates a high level language statement in a source program to a machine code and executes it immediately before translating the next statement. When an error is found, the execution of the program is halted and error message is displayed on the screen. Now, let us see few advantages and as well the disadvantages of using a high level language. The advantages are, first advantage is readability. Why is it readable? As I said in the previous slide, the high level languages are English like languages which is easily readable and which is easily understandable. If we know English pretty well, then it is pretty easy for us and it is readable. So that becomes the first and foremost advantage, readability. High level language is closer to natural language so that they are easy to learn and understand. Second advantage is it is machine independent. My dear viewers, in the earlier languages that we saw as the machine language and assembly level language, they are all machine dependent. Whereas here high level language, it is machine independent. High level language programs have the advantage of being portable between machines. The third advantage is easy debugging. It is easy to find and correct the errors in a high level language. The disadvantage is it is pretty less efficient when compared to machine language, because in a machine language you use only zeros and ones which is easily executable. That is the reason it is said to be high speed in computing. Whereas in terms of this high level language, it has to get converted, then only the efficiency increases. So the disadvantage is it is less efficient. The translation process increases the execution time of a program. Programs in high level language requires more memory space and it takes more execution time to execute a particular program. So this is a disadvantage of using a high level language. Now let us see how these high level languages are classified or categorized into. The first high level language is said to be interpreted programming languages. Second category denotes functional programming language. Third category denotes compiled programming language. Fourth category denotes procedural programming language. Fifth category denotes scripting programming language. Sixth category denotes markup programming languages. Seventh category denotes concurrent programming languages. Eighth category denotes object oriented programming languages. Now let us see each and every category of an high level language in detail. The first is to be the interpreted programming languages. What do you mean by interpreted programming languages? By the name interpreted, you interpret. It has been interpreted. We will see a definition. An interpreted language is a programming language for which most of its implementation executes instructions directly without previously compiling a program into machine language instructions. The interpreter executes the program directly, translating each statement into a sequence of one or more subroutines already compiled into machine code. The examples of an interpreted programming language are said to be Pascal. Then we will see the functional programming languages. Functional programming languages define every computation as a mathematical evaluation. They focus on the programming languages that are bound to have the mathematical calculations. For example, the Clean and Haskell languages are said to be the examples of these functional programming languages. Next category of programming high-level languages is said to be the compiled programming languages. A compiled programming is a programming language whose implementations are typically compiler and are not interpreters. It will produce a machine code from the source code. For example, what are the compiled languages? C is a compiler language. My dear viewers, many of you would have worked out with the language called C language. So C is a compiler programming language. C++, C sharp. If it has been written with C hash, you are not supposed to read it as C hash, wherein it should be read as C sharp. C sharp. Then Java. So these are all said to be the examples of the compiled programming languages. Now, let us see the next category of high-level languages said to be the procedural programming languages. The procedural programming languages is also called as imperative programming. It implies specifying the steps that the programs should take to reach to an intended state. A procedure is a group of statements that can be referred through a procedure call. Procedure help in the reusability of the code. My dear viewers, what do you mean by reusability of a code? You would have used this code somewhere in some other software, but the same set of code you can reuse it over here, and it is such a kind of activity, you call it as reusability. Reusability of a particular code to a different software, you call it as reusability of codes. Then the procedural programming makes the program structured and it is easily traceable for the program to flow. The example determines the MATLAB. The next set of language called as the scripting language. Scripting languages are the programming languages that control an application. Scripts can execute independent of any other application. They are mostly embedded in the application that they control, and they are used to automate frequently executed tasks like communicating with external programs. The examples of scripting languages said to be the JavaScript, the Visual Basic Script, which is in short called as the VB script. Next is about the markup languages. What do you mean by markup languages? Where do you use it? For designing a web page, for creating a web page. Web pages are determined or classified into two types. One is called as a static web page, other one is called as a dynamic web page. But for creating any type of web page, you use a markup language. A markup language is an artificial language that uses annotations to text and that defines how the text is to be displayed. Examples of the markup languages are HTML and XML. HTML determines hypertext markup language. XML determines extended markup language. These are some of the examples of the markup languages. Next is about the concurrent programming languages. What do you mean by concurrent programming languages? Concurrent programming languages is one wherein at the same instance of time, two or more number of programs will execute simultaneously at the same instance of time. Concurrent execution will take place. Concurrent programming is a computer programming technique that provides for the execution of operation concurrently, either within a single computer or across a number of systems. If it has been networked, so how it works. Such a kind of working you call it as concurrent programming languages. The examples are Joule language and the Limbo. Then next is about the object-oriented programming languages. What do you mean by object-oriented programming languages? My dear viewers, as far as this object-oriented programming languages are concerned, anything and everything are determined with the or classified in terms of objects. Anything and everything, you call it as an object. As an example, the chair is an object, the desk is an object, the console is an object. My dear viewers, what is a console? Any output device, you call it as a console. A monitor is an object. So, a mouse is an object, a keyboard is an object. Anything and everything, you call it as an object. So, working with those objects, you call it as the object-oriented programming languages. The object-oriented programming language is a programming paradigm based on the concept of objects which may contain data in the form of procedures which are often known as methods. The examples of an object-oriented programming languages are C++. C++ is an object-oriented programming language example. Java is an object-oriented programming language example. My dear viewers, in the earlier slides we saw one other example as C. C language is not an object-oriented programming language. C language is said to be a procedural language, whereas C++ is said to be an object-oriented programming language. That is the basic difference between working with a procedural language and an object-oriented language. In a language called C, anything and everything will be determined in terms of procedures. Whereas here in C++, anything and everything will be determined in terms of objects. C language is a subset of C++, but vice versa is not true. C++ is not a subset of C, whereas the C language, the procedural language, is a subset of this object-oriented language. So, my dear viewers, the example of a procedural language is C, whereas the example of an object-oriented language is said to be C++. This is a very basic difference between a procedural language and an object-oriented language, and it is a highly important examination point of view question too. Apart from this, as far as this object-oriented programming language is concerned, after creating the objects, anything and everything will be converted, will be classified as methods. All the data, the objects will contain data. My dear viewers, again, there is no plural. The plural of data is data, whereas the singular of data is called as datum. Many people have an intention, or many people wrongly say it as datas. There is no word called as datas. The plural of data is data. The singular of data is to be datum. Data denotes raw facts. So, in objects, the objects will contain data. The data will be in the form of procedures, and those procedures will be converted and will be made into these methods. So, the example of this object-oriented programming determines either the Java language is also an object-oriented programming language, wherein you write all classes and objects. So, the instances of classes and instances of an objects. So, you write it in terms of classes, whereas in C++, you write it in terms of objects. So, this is an example for an object-oriented programming languages. So, these are some of the languages, high-level languages that we have seen. So, as far as the programming language is concerned, it is classified into three types. Basically, programming languages are classified into three types. One was low-level language, other one was assembly-level language, third one was high-level language. Under high-level languages, these many classifications came in, and under these many classifications, you had this object oriented programming language. But the disadvantages of using any programming language is that it is not, it needs to get converted into a machine language for faster execution. And the advantages are, all object oriented languages are, it will be like the English like languages. My dear viewers, now you might be clear about what an object oriented language is, what a high level language is. Now let us see a comparative analysis between a low level language, which is said to be a machine language, with respect to an assembly level language, with respect to a high level language. So as far as a low level language or machine level language is concerned, because all the languages are broadly classified into three types. One is said to be a machine language, second one is said to be an assembly level language, third one is said to be a high level language. So as far as a low level language or the machine language is concerned, anything and everything is read as zeros and ones. There are only two values. It is binary in nature. My dear viewers, what do you mean by binary? A binary value is one which contains either 0 or 1. So the 0 and 1 are said to be the binary values. So the machine level language is said to be binary in nature. It is a low level language. But the advantage of using a machine level language is that it is of high speed, because you have only two values. One is 0, other one is 1. So the computation speed is faster. But what is the major disadvantage of using a machine level language? The disadvantage of using a machine level language is that this machine level language is machine dependent. Machine level language is machine dependent. What does it mean? A code, the zeros and ones, the low level language, which gets executed in a single machine, will not be working in a different machine. It will be working fine in my machine, but it will not work fine in my friend's machine. So that is the basic difference between, that is the major disadvantage of using a low level language. Now then we saw about the assembly level language. What is an assembly level language? Assembly level language has a symbolic representation of the machine language. Here in assembly level language, it uses all sort of symbolic notations to represent the machine language instructions. So the instructions will be pretty clear. If you want to add two numbers, it will be something like add a comma b. If you want to subtract two numbers, it will be something like sub a comma b. If you want to load it into an accumulator register, it will be like LDA A. If you want to store it in accumulator, it will be like STA. So these are all the commands that you use in the assembly level language. So assembler is a programming. It is a program that translates the assembly level language instructions into a machine level language. So it is easy, since you have only small commands, it is pretty easy to understand and use and to correct the errors. But again, it is pretty difficult to learn, because you need to know the exact keyword like LDA or STA. And for subtract, you cannot use SUBTRACT. You are supposed to use it as SUB. So such keywords you are supposed to know. Then if you knew it, it becomes easy. This is an assembly language. Now, as far as before we could go to this high level language, the third part, we saw about the compiler and an interpreter. What is a compiler? A compiler is a program that translates the source code written in a high level language into an object code. What is the source code? The source code is one that you write it in a high level language. A high level language is one that is easily understandable, which has English like statements. So, if it has an English like statements, the statements are easily understandable. That is called as a high level language. So, that is called as a source code. That programming language, you call it as a source code. Such a source code, when you convert it into an object code, what is an object code? Which means which is in the machine level language. So here what is the role of a compiler? The role of compiler is to read the whole program written in the high level language, and it converts everything into a machine readable form, into a machine level language, which means it converts everything into zeros and ones. Then what is an interpreter? An interpreter, it translates the high level language in line by line. So, supposing, my dear viewers, you would have worked with a language called C language, a procedural language called C language. And supposing if you get an error, you press an F5 key, wherein it will be checking line by line. So, the role of interpreter is to check line by line. So, it translates the high level language program line by line, one line at a time, line by line. So, this interpreter translates the high level language statement in a source program into a machine code, and it is used for executing immediately into the next statement. Then the advantages of using high level languages are the readability. It is all machine independent. It is all, you can debug the contents. And the disadvantages, as I said, it is less efficient because it needs to convert. The role of the compiler or the interpreter has to make the programming language to convert into a machine readable form, which takes a quite amount of time. Wherein in the case of the low level languages as machine language, it is already in a machine readable form. So it is faster in execution. Whereas in terms of high level language, it has to get converted into a lower level language, it takes time. So, but the major advantage of a high level language is, if you are going to write a source code in one particular machine, if you are going to take the same source code to a different machine and if you try to execute, it will work as far as a high level language is concerned. But as far as a machine level language is concerned, it will not work, because machine level languages are machine dependent, whereas high level languages are machine independent. So that is the basic difference between using a machine language, assembly level language, and a high level language. So as far as the high level languages are concerned, we have the compiled programming language, which is also called as the procedural, and we have compiled programming language, and then we have procedural programming language, scripting language, markup languages, which is used for determining the web pages. We have the concurrent programming languages, and we have the object oriented programming languages. Then now we saw the basic difference between all the languages, all the high level languages. Now let us summarize this session. We have seen what is a programming language. We have seen the purpose of using a language. We have seen the basic difference between a machine level language, an assembly level language, and a high level language. We have seen the classification of the high level programming languages. We have seen the different types, and we have listed with several examples of each and every high level language. Thank you.